I always start to type. Hi, Paula. You're the first one here. I wonder where Debbie Sue is. I hope she's okay. She's probably digging into her candy bag. Did you see what my topic is? We're going to talk about our first jobs, how old we were, what we liked about it. You did. You beat Debbie Sue here. I mean, maybe she's not even going to come now if she's not first. So, how old were you when you got your first job, Paula? And where was it? Oh, there she is. Hi, Debbie. You got to be a little quicker. Paula beat you. Sally's going to be really mad. I didn't text Sally or anything, though, so she didn't have which I didn't text either one of you either. So I wanted to talk about first jobs, how old we were and where our job was, whether we liked it or not. Debbie says, my sister was messaging me. Paula says, I was 18, Hardee's. Okay. I was 14. I started at a car dealership in the detail department. It was in an old feed house that kind of looked like a barn. So we could pull the cars indoors and clean them. We had a big kerosene steam cleaner that we cleaned all the oil off of the engines and the undercarriage and stuff. And then when they dried, we took clear spray paint and painted everything so it looked shiny and nobody could tell that the oil was leaking on the car. Debbie says, I worked part-time in our school office at 16. Oh, I bet you were really sweet, Debbie. They probably would have never let me anywhere near my school office. Because my junior year, I missed over 45 days of school. And I was skipping a lot. And the vice principal came up to me at the end of the year and he said, I want you to know I'm going to call your parents over the summer and you will be in school more next year. And I said, you can call them if you want. They don't care. And he never called. So, Debbie, you had weekends off. I did not have weekends off. Well, Sunday we were closed. But Paula probably worked both Saturday and Sunday. Debbie says, I worked there my junior and senior year and then was offered full-time job as school secretary. Did you do that, Debbie? Did you take the full-time position? And Paula says, I didn't have a car, so my poor parents had to take me back and forth. Daddy then bought a car for me to use after about 3 months. Well, that's nice. Yeah, I rode my bike when I was 14. And Debbie says, no, she went to college to be a nurse. Were you a nurse, Debbie? If you were, I've never heard that before. Oh, nice. Were you a nurse in a hospital or a doctor's office? I loved cleaning cars out because we were paid by the hour, not the job. So pull the back seats out and there would be money and jewelry. And I mean, you'd find all kinds of good stuff in those cars. And they were already traded in. So nothing was returned. We kept what we found. And I was the only girl that worked in that department too. There was only boys that worked in there. And Debbie says, I worked in a nursing home for years, then went into home health and the hospital for a few years, but loved home health the most. That's interesting. I think of home health as people that really can't get around very good and then being cranky. I had home health visit me in 2019 after I had my colostomy surgery, which was reversed. But several times it was a different person each time, but they would come and help me get the bag placed on, and it was not a fun time, and I was kind of on the miserable side, but the ladies were really nice that came to help. So when I worked in that detail department, I worked in there until I was probably 16. And then I started looking at the service department, and I went in and started doing their filing, paper files. And then somewhere in the mid 80s, they got a computer and everything was computerized. And then I went in after school and on Saturdays and started inputting all the service history on all the cars, which was the VIN and the mileage and the customer's name and address, as well as what kind of procedures they had done to their vehicle. And that was long and boring, especially for a teenager, because it was boring. But that's how I worked my way into the service department. And Paula says the first couple of months were awful. After I learned how to move fast, I liked my job. I have worked some fast food and I like the drive through the most. But yes, it's very fast paced and you don't really get a second chance if you put the wrong order out the window and then you can't take it back in and give it to anybody else. You have to throw it away. And, busy times are busy times. And Debbie says, yeah, I still help people in my husband's family and they call me Dr. Debbie. Aww. That has to be frustrating since you have so many shoulder and neck problems and you helped everyone else. Do you think it's from like lifting people that you have the problems? Mine are from being in this position, which you really can't see, but my hand's out in front of me, so it curves my shoulders and is actually giving me really bad posture. And I'm trying to work on that because I noticed even when I was walking, like if the sun is going to my side, I could see my shadow and I had that hunched over, and I'm really trying to be more conscious to pull my shoulders back and walk upright. Debbie says, I think part of it is, and a lot is from having lupus that causes joint and muscle problems. Oh, okay. How long have you known you've had lupus, Debbie? Paula said, amazes me today how people in fast food move so slowly. My manager would holler, Grandma was slow, get moving. Yeah, I don't. We had to move fast. We did. We had to move fast. I didn't have that job very long. It was a restaurant called Arctic Circle. And when I went in to apply, there was a whole bunch of applicants. It was in Oregon and there just weren't very many jobs. So I went in for the interview and I didn't hear anything, but it had only been a day or two. And then I was going into Fred Meyer, which is a store kind of like Walmart or Myers up in the Midwest. And I was walking in and there was a man walking out. And I said, hey, I remember you. You did my interview for Arctic Circle. And I said, yes. And he said, well, you know what? I'm going to hire you on the spot just because I like your people skills and you remembered who I was. And I was like, yay, I was so happy. Well, I worked there about 3 days and then I had an opportunity to go on a cross country motorcycle trip. I was 17 at the time, to go on this motorcycle trip for 3 weeks. And so I called him and I asked if I could take 3 weeks off after I'd only worked 3 days. And he wasn't very happy, but he said yes, that he would hold my job. So I left for this trip and then I came back and I don't know what happened to me. I was being really irresponsible and I worked a couple of days and then I called in sick and he said, you're calling in sick is for the birds, you're fired. So I had a job for a month that I worked only 4 or 5 days. Okay, let's see. Paula says, oh, I read that. Debbie says, I was diagnosed in 2001. Wow. So that's been 24 years. That's a long time. I know some people don't fare as well on lupus. One person in particular I'm thinking of. So, Paula, did you go to school while you were working fast food and then go into the education field? Or I know you were a school counselor, but I don't know what is different about that schooling than, to be a regular teacher. I had another job. Oh, Debbie says, yeah, I have friends who passed away. Yeah, I worked with a lady that did. Paula says she didn't go to college until she was 25. So I went to work at this other place. It was called Tim's Top Shop, and it was they made seat inserts for cars that came with vinyl seats, and they would take the stitching out and put a cloth insert in. We made boat tops. That was the main thing, was boat tops and recovering boat seats. And it was it was a good job in that it was easy. I just drove cars back and forth to get stuff done on them, even used cars. If there was a tear in the seat or a hole, we would go to the used car lots, even the tote the note lots. And I traveled around with this other guy most of the time, and we'd bring the cars back and get them worked on. But the owner was not a very nice man. His name was Tim. And I had to ride with him this 11-mile trip from Albany to Corvallis in Oregon. And we're taking his big old boat of a Cadillac or whatever. And I'm not saying much. He was like 6'6" or 6'7", big, tall guy. And I'm sitting in the passenger seat with him, not looking at him and not talking to him. And he said something like, we're out here on this desolate road. He said, I've got a case of beer in the trunk. He goes, there's nothing stopping me from pulling over and doing to you whatever I want to, and no one would hear you. And I was completely panicked. I mean, I was a teenager. I didn't have experience with this kind of thing, a grown man. And nothing happened, but I never wanted to ride with him again. I mean, men were creeps back then. I mean, lots of almost horribles happened to me everywhere I worked. Paula said, after Hardee's, I was a waitress for a year, then a Levi's jeans factory for 4 years. I just got a flash of Officer and a Gentleman when you said factory. And Debbie says, I have done really well, but I have kidney, lung, and heart involvement now, but I am still blessed though. Yes, I mean, unless you told us, I wouldn't know anything was wrong. And Debbie says, that's interesting, Paula. Paula says, Debbie Sue, I have an autoimmune disease too, diagnosed in 1997. And Debbie said, that's awful, Evie. And Paula says, Evie, oh my gosh, what a creep he was. And there was another time, my most favorite job I ever had was working in a bowling alley. And I worked in the kitchen part, making snacks and drinks and stuff. And there was a kitchen that was shared between the bar where the drinks were and the pool tables and stuff like that was. And when we had tournaments, I would work until 2 or 2:30 on a school night. Not legal, but I did it. And a lot of the older people on the leagues would get very drunk while they were bowling. And I think I told this on a video back 6 months ago when I started my channel, but I was kind of in this corner, and there was a dishwasher that was in a corner. It had 2 doors that opened up, and you put a round dishwashing rack. You put your dishes on it and you slid it in, close the door and push a button, and it washed these dishes really fast. And then on the other side, you pulled them out and let them drain and then put a new basket in. So I'm standing to the left of this corner and I feel somebody up behind me, like not just that they were there. I mean, I felt their body, and I turned around and there's this, I'm going to say old, but 60 something man with white hair I'm turned around facing him. I think he assisted in that. He like jerked me. And then he started literally shoving his tongue down my throat. If that would happen today, that man would go to jail. But what happened that night was I was doing my best to push him off and I was hitting him with my fists. And by the time I got his mouth off of mine, I was saying, "Get off of me, get off of me." And he's like, "Okay, just drunk as a skunk." And he walks out of the kitchen. I got water, washed my mouth out, wiped my mouth off, and just went back to doing my dishes. And Debbie says, "Paula, these autoimmune diseases can be terrible." And Debbie says, "Oh my goodness." And Paula says, "Oh, Evie, how terrifying." It really was. I mean, the men were just terrible and they were allowed to be that way. Nobody did anything about it. Yes, I did. Yes, Paula, I did go back to doing dishes. I didn't even have a dishwashing diary either. But that's my dishwashing story. It was an assault, especially because I think I was 16 and I didn't have the life skills that I would have now. Like I would be cautious now of somebody coming up behind me, and I just wasn't then. And yeah, it was absolutely awful. My heart was racing for a long time, but I didn't know of anybody to tell. I never even told my parents. I just went on with whatever. No, I didn't tell my parents, Paula. I did not. There was one night I was supposed to change out the French fry grease and I opened the spigot on the bottom and I forgot to put the bucket underneath and I flooded the kitchen with oil. And I had to get my dad out of bed. I called him and told him to bring a bunch of kitty litter and he helped me clean that up. That was at 2:30 we were open 24 hours, but the tournaments were over and we were going to clean up and go home. And I made a really big mess. Hey, there's Connie. I haven't seen you in a long time. Connie, we're talking about our first jobs, whether we were teenagers or 20s. I think a lot of us went to work as teenagers. Paula says, "I was assaulted too and never told my parents. I didn't realize it was an assault until years later." Exactly, because you feel like, I will say, I felt like it was my fault. It was my fault. I was working that late and maybe I was too nice or whatever the case was, but awful. And Debbie says, "Oh my goodness, Paula." And then Paula says hi to Connie. Connie says, "Oh, LOL, I worked at a donut shop." So did you work early? How old were you? Because donut shops are typically open pretty early. Well, I'll continue to talk about the bowling alley then. So the husband and wife managed the bowling alley snack bar area. The husband liked me and the wife didn't. And so basically, when we got everything cleaned up, all the food prep was done, there was nothing to do. There was only about a half dozen bar stools around that area. Most of the food was taken to where they were bowling. So there wasn't much to clean other than, the food prep areas and that one counter. And so the wife said to me that I was staying there talking to another girl, and she goes, "I am sick and tired of all the talking you do. That's all you do is talk." She goes, "You're fired." And I was like, okay. So, I lived at home. I didn't have the responsibilities of, really paying bills. I paid a car and a truck off by the time I was 18, but I mean, I didn't have the rent coming due or anything. I started walking toward the door, these big automatic sliding doors, and the husband came running after me and he's like, "No, no, no, you're not fired. She's wrong." I was, okay. So I went back to work. This lady was strange. She had white hair that she dyed black and it was really short. And then she would wear the little headband with this dyed black hair standing up straight and you could see the white roots. And she said she loved hamburgers. Okay, a lot of people do, but she would take the raw patty, that's been frozen with the paper between. She would take that out and take the diced onions that were fresh, and she would roll it up and she would eat it like that. Connie says, late night, believe it or not, got off work at 10 p.m. Okay. Was it a fun job? I think little coffee shops, little donut shops would be really fun because you'd have a lot of the regular customers. Debbie says, yeah, Paula, he took advantage, 40 years old. Okay, I must have missed something. Oh, there we go. Paula says it was an attractive older man. I was 16. He was 40. I was flattered at the attention. Now I realize it was assault. Yeah. Connie says, I'm sorry anyone had to experience something like an assault. How horrific. And Paula says, yes, Debbie Sue, I'm sure I wasn't the only one. And Debbie said, no, Paula, he probably did that many times. Yes, and the old conversation used to be, well, she's dressing like she wants the attention. She asked for it. And while I do understand what they're saying, adult men need to remember they're adult men and these are still children if they're under 18. And there's no excuse for it. I don't care if that man is sitting in a chair and that girl comes up to him stark naked and sits on his lap. He is to turn her down. Paula's, oh yeah, I read that. Connie says, yes, it was fun. People would pick up donuts for the next day. Oh, I gotcha. Okay. And Debbie says, yes, that's right. Paula says, yes, so true. Adults have to be adults. Yep, they do. Because there's a lot of adults and children both that suffer from things where other people have taken advantage of them, whether it's a family member or a family friend or a complete stranger. I think the closer the person is to you, the more effect it has on you because you probably still have to see that person and interact with them. And there's also the people, I know of people that have been assaulted, taken advantage of by a step parent or boyfriend of the parent, and the child isn't believed. Paula says, yes, I think so too. And so Debbie thinks so too. So Connie, I worked in a car dealership all my life. I had a few, different odd jobs as a teenager. And I took 6 years off to have my kids. And Paula was an elementary school counselor, retired from that. And Debbie was a nurse, and she's retired from that. And she's worked in hospitals and home health care. I think that's all she said. So, Connie, what about you? Your turn. And while you're typing, Paula says, yes, so often people don't believe the child. And Connie says, I bet every woman could tell a story about uncomfortable situations. Yes. And the more of us that talk about it, make it easier for other people to talk about it, because especially I think the younger the person is, the more they can tend to blame themselves because they don't have the maturity and life skills to say, this is right and this is wrong. Oh, really? So Connie and Debbie were both nurses and in a hospital. You're retired too, right, Connie? And Paula says, my first degree was nutrition. I was in the WIC nutrition for 8 years. Oh, okay. So that's the women in crisis where they can go and get food during their pregnancy, and then they can get food and baby formula for after the baby's born. That's all I know about it. And Connie says, yay, nurses, yes, retired. And Debbie says, I did an odd job one time while in college at a grocery store asking customers on their way out where they were from. And I had to mark it on a map for the grocery store. So they still do that. They just ask what your zip code is. And Debbie says, yay, Connie. Yeah, I had somebody ask me that pretty recently. It might have been at Michael's where they asked me what my zip code was. But that used to be a pretty common thing. They wanted to know where their shopping traffic was coming from. I need to go back to Michael's before Monday because I found out today I'm going to watch my little grandboys on Monday from 2:45 until 6. And I think I'm going to get some of the long sleeve sweatshirts for them to finger paint. Paula says, right, women, infants, and children supplemental nutrition. Oh, okay. When I knew about WIC was when I was young and lived in Oregon, and I had friends on it that were, single and pregnant, and it was called Women in Crisis. And Debbie says, oh, the WIC program, Paula. Connie says, everyone had interesting jobs. And Paula says, right, Debbie Sue. Yeah, I had several when I was a teenager, and I had another short time one in a nice sit-down restaurant, and I was busing. You had to work your way up to being, cooking or being a hostess or a server. They call it a waitress then. And I met this guy that was one of the chefs, and I was still a teenager. And for whatever reason, I decided to go to his house. And I mean, he invited me, and nothing bad happened. I was there, and this was the time where there was house telephones. And so I had to call home because I didn't go home after work. I went to this guy's house, and he was, I don't know, 4 or 5 years older than I was. I had no business being there, but he really was a nice guy. So I used his phone to call my mom, and I said, hey, I'm over at, Linda's house. I made a name up. And she said, I've never heard of that name before. She said, let me talk to her mom. And I said, oh, her mom ran to the store. And she said, okay, let me talk to her dad then. And I said, oh, her dad's in a wheelchair. It's going to be a minute. And she said, Evelyn Marie, I don't know where you are or what you're doing, but you better get your butt home now. And I hung the phone up. I said, I got to go. And Debbie says that's such a good program. And Paula says, yes, I loved WIC. Debbie said it's helped so many people. Paula says, oh no, busted. Yes, I was busted. Wise mama. I know. I don't really know how. I was trying to be like super cash. Mom. No. I gave it away somehow. And that was before caller ID. I mean, she just knew. So now we've talked about jobs, and there's only 4 of us here, maybe 5. Please hit like. But let's talk about times when we, should we say, did get busted or didn't get busted. Like we had a really good time and we never got caught. That's a good one. Because the time I remember, I was a junior in high school. That was my wildest year. And I went to this senior graduation party. It was held way out in the country. And there was a 3-story barn out there. And for whatever reason, all the beer was on the 3rd floor. And we could go downstairs and across this field into a house to go to the bathroom. And I was supposed to be at a school dance. So I came down, like you had to, it wasn't stairs. In the middle of the barn, there was this square hole and there was a ladder that went all the way up to the top. Well, I went to go down from the 3rd story and my foot slipped. I fell 3 stories on my right hip. And when I hit the bottom, there was 3 guys standing there. And I was so embarrassed. I had long hair and I stood up and I went, whew, that was fast. And off I went to the bathroom. But I got caught sometimes when I was somewhere I wasn't supposed to be, but that time I didn't, and it was a really fun party. Oh, Catherine's here. Paula says, my poor parents thought I was truthful. Bless their hearts. Oh, I would have gotten away with murder in that house. And Catherine says, good morning, breakfast with Evie and company. I love it. Good morning, Catherine. And Debbie says, hi, Catherine. Paula says, hi, Catherine. And she says, hi back to both of them. And Debbie is laughing at me. Catherine says, oh, Evie, these stories. Yeah, you'll have to go back and watch the first of it. We talked about our first jobs and some things that happened on them that were not great. Is anyone else going to Sherry? Is anyone else going to share a story, or do you want me to continue? I don't want to keep y'all here, but I'm chatty today. Paula says they thought because we went to church that their kids didn't lie. Oh. Connie says my mom was the worst, meaning that you could not tell her the truth and she would believe you. Catherine said, I stuffed my bed with pillows one night to go out to a party at school, to go to a party. A guy at school dared me to go. He said, you won't be there. Me being me, that was enough to make me determined to be there. And did it work? Because I had friends that, like, their parents put the water buckets above the door. They short sheeted their bed, where you take the bottom of the sheet and you tuck it halfway up and put sand in there and stuff. I mean, they had their way of knowing you were out where you weren't supposed to be. Oh, Connie says she always knew where I was. Oh, but you were still probably not in a safe place. Unless I'm completely misunderstanding. Oh, no, she was like Sherlock. Oh, so you couldn't get away with anything. I gotcha. I kind of think I was that way with my daughter too, because she was so naughty. And she went to, this just struck me now. She went to a friend's house, and I was always suspicious of her because I double checked on her. I called where she was supposed to be, they had the cell phones and stuff. And this one night, she was in high school, and I said, well, where are you? Because her and her friend had went somewhere supposedly. And she goes, well, we're back at Ashley's now, and we're just about to go to sleep. And I'm like, it's 9:30, right? So I said, okay, well, I just wanted to call and make sure everything was okay. And she's like, yeah, we're just really tired. And I said, okay. Next thing I heard, she goes, okay, guys, you can turn the music back up. And I hear, wom, 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 wom. The next thing I heard was the word for poop, but over and over again, poop, 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 as she hangs the call up. Paula says, when I was a junior, my friends and I moved a girlfriend out of her parents' home one school day. She had married her boyfriend in secret. Oh, I have another story. Catherine says, it worked until my dad obviously woke up and saw my bed stuffed. He called the parents of the party and came to pick me up. Oh my gosh. My poor dad. My mom had died 3 years prior. How embarrassing for you too. But yeah, that was a lot for your dad. And Paula says she had helped her mom freeze stuffed peppers and creamed corn. I remember digging in her mom's chest freezer for corn and peppers for my friend wanted to take with her. For corn and peppers my friend wanted to take with her. Connie says, OMG, how could you marry in secret? She must have been 18, or maybe some states don't have mandatory ages. And Heather says, OMG, Paula. And poor dad, Paula says that. Oh gosh. So this one day I was at school, and there was 5 of us girls, and we were going to go to a girl's house, and we were going to use the little tiny rolly papers with the grain stuff in it on the way to her house. And now I was not a proficient user of that. I was very new to it, and it's still that way. But so we got in the car, and we drove to my friend Shelly's house, and all of a sudden we're really, really hungry. And we were actually on a lunch break and we were allowed to leave, but we weren't allowed to leave and do that, obviously. So we're like, man, we're really hungry because it was lunchtime. We hadn't had lunch. And then, of course, what we had just done. And so Shelly goes, oh my gosh. She goes, my nephew's birthday was yesterday. We have his cake. So she gets up on top of the refrigerator and she pulls this quarter sheet cake down that has just one little corner piece out of it. And she brings 5 forks. And we sat on the floor around the coffee table and we ate the entire cake. And then we went back to school and we had shorthand class after that. And all of us girls were in the same class. So that day we were supposed to take dictation and then pass our shorthand pad to the right. And then that person was supposed to read what we had written. Well, it didn't turn out good. And the teacher said, I don't know what you girls did before class, but I have a very good idea and it better never happen again because I will report you. We're just like, yes, ma'am. Okay, let me catch up here. So Paula says she was 18 as a junior. Oh, okay. And Catherine said it was embarrassing, but my own fault in hindsight. We were all going through a lot. Yes. And friends are everything when you're a teenager. And Debbie says, I went to the movies with my best friend's cousin when I went to her house that night and somebody saw us at the movie and told my brother. He ratted me out to my parents. That's all I got. LOL. The one time you do something wrong, you get caught. Paula says, Debbie Sue ratted out. Oh no. Debbie says, LOL, Paula, that's the only thing I remember doing, but I guess it was enough. K and RO hiking happens. Hi, everyone. Kevin here. Hi, Kevin. We're talking, we've switched subjects. We were talking about first jobs, which we can still go back to if you'd like to share. And then we switched to things we got away with as a teenager, whether you got caught or not. And everyone is saying hello to Kevin and Mike. Is that what he said? Oh, Kevin, I'm sorry. Kevin says hello to Catherine. And Paula says hello and says we're telling teen stories. And K and RO. I don't know if it's K and Ro or K and RO. I think it's K and Ro. Hi, Paula, and hi, Evie. So do you have anything you'd like to share with us? I think the best stories are the ones that we did not get caught. Okay. Kevin says, my first job was cashier at ShopRite. And were you in high school or was that during college or just like your first job at 18? Okay, because somebody, Kevin's answering that Kay and Ro, my wife is Roseanne, because I think I've seen your channel before. And you're, wait. Is it D and, no, it's not D's channel. It's Julie. I can't remember her channel name right now. Aren't you friends with Julie? And I was on one of her lives and you came on and you were hiking up by the Appalachian Trail. Is that right at all? And let's see, Debbie Sue said, yeah, I thought it was okay until my brother ratted me out. You should have tried again, Debbie Sue. Kevin says, senior year of high school. Okay. And Connie says, my boyfriend and I were going to a farm field underage beer party. Oh, I remember those. Those were so fun. Julie, oh, I remembered something. Yes, because I went to your channel after that because Julie said that y'all were stopping for lunch on your hike. I think you were 5 miles in and you had 3 more to go or something. And my memory is sharp today. Ha ha. Kevin says, I'm absolutely correct. And Paula says, I met a boy at the beach when I was 14. My sweet parents let him come stay for a week. Not a good idea. He was 15 and smoked pot on the front porch. He's probably dead by now. Did you participate, Paula? Connie says, when we got close to the field, we saw several police car lights blazing. Oh no. And Kevin says, Julie is here in New Jersey. Okay. And Debbie says, oh, Paula, LOL. Where we went, it was called the Cliffs. And it was way out in the country. And it was actually, you had to cross private property to get to it. So it was kind of like you were hoping that old man wasn't outside because he would call the police on you. But there was this huge cliff down into a body of water that everybody jumped off into. And Connie says, we got out, but many of our friends were taken into the police station. Oh my gosh. And Paula says, no, I never did, was never tempted. Paula says, oh, Connie. Now, I wasn't bad, but I definitely like to go have some fun. And Kevin says, very good. I'm working on that hike video right now. There's a couple of minutes of us joining Julie's live from a really nice viewpoint. Awesome. Awesome. I like to hike. I haven't done that many miles in a really long time. There's a park about, it's probably 15 miles from me. And it's a bicycle park and hiking park. The bikes go one way and the hikers go the opposite way. And I think it's an 8 or 9 mile loop, something like that. And I've done that before, but I haven't done it recently. Debbie says, I can't wait to see the video. And Connie says, I know, Paula, it was scary. My parents would have grounded me for life. But you could just sneak out. Paula says, Connie, yes, for life. But I got paid back because my daughter, oh my gosh, she was such a handful and she snuck out all the time. Kevin says, I narrowly missed getting busted for pot a few times back then. It's legal now in Jersey. Oh, okay. I remember being at, because I'm making myself sound like a horrible person, but I wasn't, and I'm not, but I did have fun. But we were at a friend's it was a house, but it was into 2 apartments, the top and the bottom, and the apartment I was in was on the top. And he had just pulled out a Frisbee that was underneath the couch with the stuff in it. And bang, bang, bang on the door. Please open up. And I was like, oh, crap. I literally jumped out that window onto the roof of the house next to get away. But I did it. Paula says, I was a stupid kid, but was never tempted by pot. Well, growing up in Oregon, everybody grew it there. There was not like, it was just a norm. It wasn't like, oh, we're going to do this. It was like, there was a lot of it. Catherine says, I did so many different things. There's not enough time to tell you, but I started out working in a bakery after dropping out of school, then in a grocery store before training in office duties. And now look at you. Even though you dropped out, you are an author, and I cannot remember if I knew what you retired from. And Kevin is laughing. And Paula says, my friend didn't smoke pot. We just moved, secretly married friends out when we were supposed to be in school. But it's a good memory, right? Hey, are they still married? Did it work? And Catherine says, later I was in admin management training and an executive support, a flight attendant for 5 years, and then 10 years with 3 of my own business. That's success. Paula says, no, sadly, he was a dud. Oh. Well, we don't know what we're doing when we choose boyfriends and husbands when we're really young. We just don't. We think if they're cute and they're fun to be with, that's enough. But being responsible is a pretty big deal. Paula says, but we thought it was terribly romantic at teens. Well, it still is. It just wasn't a good decision. Was it very? Are you still friends with her? Do you know where she is? So, Kevin, have you? Okay, you did tell one story. Oh, good, good, good. So, did she find a good guy and get married and have a family and all that? Oh, good. Paula says that she's still in contact with her and she's one of her besties. Good. I still have contact with several girls that I met over the years because I switched school every 2 years in elementary school. And I think that my oldest friend goes back to third grade. And Kevin says, Ro and I are married 42 years now. Most of our friends have divorced. Yeah, that's sad because a lot happens to your friends too when you get divorced. At least it did for me. I was married 15 years and then we got divorced and then I got remarried. I guess it was 12 years later, in 2008. I was married in 81 from 81 to 96 and then I got remarried in 2008 till now. So I think it's 16 or 17 years, something like that. And Connie says, I always wanted to be an airline hostess and travel. Yeah, that did look kind of glamorous when I was young too. But my mom said, you can't do that. You're too tall. And Paula says, successful at work, not at love. Do you mean her current husband? Paula says, Catherine, a flight attendant, looked glamorous. It does. But I think it's actually really hard work. And then you've got to go to sleep at odd hours and wake up at odd hours. And Paula says, hard work for sure. Yes. And people have changed so much over the years. Like if you watch or see pictures of people flying in the 50s and 60s, they got dressed up for it. The little girls wore hats and gloves and the men wore suits and the ladies wore dresses. And it was like they served you your food. And I don't know. I think they were nice to the attendants and the stewards and stewardesses, what they called them then. And it was reciprocated. And now it's like, I demand this and I demand that. And some people I'm not saying you need to dress up, but there's some people that have some poor hygiene problems that are out there. You have to sit right next to. And Kevin says EOP. What does EOP mean? Rhonda's here. Hi, Rhonda. She says, I finally caught you live, stopping in to say hi. Hey, Rhonda, we've had a really good conversation. We've talked about first jobs, things we got away with when we were teenagers, things we didn't get away with when we were teenagers. And Connie says, congrats, Kay and Ro. Okay, I missed something. And Kevin says, people are so rude now. Flight attendant would not be fun now. No, it wouldn't. At least they keep the drunk people off of there, or at least try to. And Kevin says, thanks, Connie. Oh, and then Kevin says that was a typo. Okay. And Rhonda says, LOL. Oh, okay. I'm sorry, Roxanne. I was thinking I read the channel as entreaty. Entreaty was what instead of reinventing. I don't know how I got those mixed up, but that's the honest truth. Roxanne, I saw you with What's Up, is his name channel Phil with What's Up Boomer or something like that's his channel name. I saw you on that. That was such a great show. And Paula says, true, and people have no respect for authority. Flight attendants should be respected as the authority in the planes. Yes, they should. Paula says, hi, Roxanne. Connie says, I would get fired because first rude person would get their beverage service in their lap. Be like the movie Airplane, where that lady is like, oh, I don't know what's happening to her. I can't remember that, but I just remember the line of people, and they're like, stop it, and then you look in the line, and there's a guy with the wrench tapping it in his hand like he's gonna whop her with it. And Kevin says hi to Roxanne. Okay, we're coming up on an hour. There's 10 minutes left. So does anybody want to talk about anything? Oh, Roxanne, you get called Rhonda all the time. Maybe you said that on that live with Phil. Catherine says, Roxanne says hi to everyone. And Catherine says, are they not respected as the authority in the planes in the U.S.? I worked for our national airline and flew internationally. Well, from what I've seen, I mean, I've seen people having to get off of the plane for whatever reason, and they just refuse to leave, and they have to stop everything they're doing, get everybody off the plane, get that person off the plane, and then reload the plane. And yeah, people are not behaving. But I don't know that it's domestic or international. I just know that it's planes. Paula says, Connie, yes. Oops. Spill. So are you talking about her comment about the flight attendant, or is it something earlier? Yeah, I mean, some of them are, Catherine, some of the ones that I've seen are on YouTube, but people are terrible. There was one not too long ago where another, what do you call it? Another person that was going to fly, like, had to help restrain a passenger. And then there was another one where a lady that was a grandmother age lady restrained some other female passenger. Oh, how about if you worked in customs in the airport? I bet you find some interesting things there that they did not intend, the person carrying didn't intend for it to be caught. Oh yeah, Catherine, 30 years ago, it's way different. I mean, even from, well, yeah, I guess that was, so not that long ago, but no, it was like 39 years ago. So yeah. Paula says, wasn't some celebrity in the news last year for refusing to turn his phone off? Probably. Alec Baldwin, maybe, she asks. It's hard to say. I didn't see that one in particular, but definitely, I mean, we've always had people that feel privileged, but there's more and more people that feel privileged than ever before. Right, Paula, you said on a plane. I knew what you meant. I haven't heard anything about that one. And Kevin says air travel is no fun anymore. No, it's not. Especially when you have to like half strip down. You got to take your shoes and your socks off, and all the stuff gets gone through so many times before you finally get on the plane. And then a lot of times you have to sit there and wait a long time after you've arrived. I haven't flown since 2018. Connie says, LOL, Paula, yes, that spill would be an uh-oh for sure. It's like you're walking, oop. Debbie says, yeah, it was Alec Baldwin on American Airlines. Okay. What did they do to resolve that? I guess I could look it up myself. But I suppose he didn't have to get off the plane. They just talked him into it, and he acted like it was his idea. Okay, I don't mind. Those Baldwin boys. Paula says she can't remember. Well, if you were popular like that, or famous, whichever you want to call it, and you did one bad thing, boy, you wouldn't get away with it. Somebody sees you, they're going to start recording and wait on you to do something. Thank goodness there were not cell phones with recordings when we were teenagers, because I would have been in a lot more trouble. Usually I really wasn't ever in trouble, but I got caught at a few things. Debbie says he was playing a game or something. And Kevin says, actually, the best flight we had was during COVID. No one was in the airport or on the plane. Smooth sailing. Nice. And Paula says, I think he was playing a game on his phone, maybe. And Debbie says, oh, they kicked him off? Wow. Good example. I mean, not that, I mean, I don't want somebody to get kicked off the plane, but rules are rules. We have people that think that the rules don't apply to them. And Paula says, OMG, so thankful there were no cell phones or social media when I was a teen. Exactly. It would have made it way harder to get. I mean, I guess the nice thing was like we would have went out to the place like we called the Cliffs. There probably wouldn't have been any cell service there, but it certainly would have, somebody would have talked about it if there would have been Facebook. It would have been, people would have known. Well, we are at 56 minutes. Do you guys want to keep going or do you want to hang it up? This one has probably been my most fun live. We've kept the conversation going and we've gradually went into other subjects. It's really been fun. Paula says, I got to go start tacos. Very fun live, Evie. Okay, well, I think that's the cue. If Paula's got to make tacos and I've already been on here almost an hour, that's my fair share of time. If you haven't hit like, would you hit like on your way out? And I'll see you next time. I love doing these lives. Thank you, everybody. Bye.